Hi everyone, I hope all of you are doing great. So in today's video, we'll discuss about one more question from our Playwright interview series. That is, what is action timeout, what is expect timeout, and what is test timeout. Now in the interview, the interviewer might frame this question in a different way. That what is the default timeout applies in case of auto-wait, or what is the default timeout for any action, or what is the how will you maintain timeout in case of any assertion, or how do you maintain test timeout in your Playwright framework? So the question can be framed differently, but you should know all these concepts. Now let's discuss it one by one. So the first one is action timeout. So action timeout applies to user actions, means action timeout will apply to any kind of user actions. That is, if you are clicking on any element, or you are filling up a text box, or let's say you are typing into a text box, or any other user actions that you are performing. In all those cases, the action timeout will be applied, and the default action timeout is 30 seconds, right? So this is the default timeout for auto-wait as well. So for the auto-wait mechanism also, the default timeout is 30 seconds, that the playwright will wait for an action. So the playwright will wait for the element to be visible, stable, and enabled before performing any kind of action. So that action timeout is applies in those cases, and the default is 30 seconds. Now the next one is expect timeout. Now expect timeout applies to assertions, means let's say you are validating whether a element is visible or not, or whether a element has a particular text or not, or let's say you are validating a URL. So in all those cases, the expect timeout gets applied, and the default is 5 seconds. For example, for example, you need to pass a timeout of let's say 30 seconds. You can mention it inside this first brackets, right? So inside the first brackets, you can mention the timeout as 30 seconds. In that case, Playwright will wait for the assertion to be verified for 30 seconds. So expect timeout applies to assertions, and it controls how long Playwright retries an assertion. So it will retry again and again to check whether the assertion has passed or not. So here is a demo code example of, let's say you are clicking on any submit button. In that case, the action timeout will be applied, and the default is 30 seconds. And let's say you are validating whether a element is visible or not. So in that case, the expect timeout will be applied, and the default is 5 seconds. Now let's jump into test timeout. Now test timeout in Playwright defines the maximum time a single test is allowed to run. If the test execution exceeds this time, Playwright fails the test, and this test timeout can be configured globally in the playwright config.ts file, or at the suite level, or at the test level as well. Means that you can configure the test timeout for a particular test also using the test.setTimeout, or let's say you want to configure the test timeout globally. In that case, you can mention it inside the playwright config.ts file. Now, in which cases you, you need to maintain a test timeout in a different way, or for a particular test. So for example, let's say the default test timeout is 30 seconds, right? So the default test timeout is 30 seconds. So let's say an example of a login test where you will fill up the username, you will fill up the password, and you will click on the sign in button. So this whole flow can be executed easily within 30 seconds. In those cases, you no need to configure the timeout differently. But let's say you have an end-to-end test case where you are automating from the login, starting from the login till the checkout page for a e-commerce application. In that case, it might not be completed within 30 seconds. Let's say you may take 1 minute, right? So in those cases, we need to configure the test timeout for that particular test, and we can use this test.setTimeout method and will pass 1 minute in milliseconds, means 60,000 seconds, 60,000 ms inside the first brackets, right? That's how we can configure the test timeout for a particular test or at a suit level. So that's all about this video. If you have any doubt, let me know in the comments and we'll see you in the next one.